What's up, Benchwarmers? We're here for Gameweek 7. That's right, Gameweek 7's preview. I'm joined by Marco the Interrupter for this week's fantasy episode. Just a quick reminder for where you guys can catch us. You can catch us on all social media platforms by searching Benchwarmers FC1, and that's on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Marco, where can they watch our videos?
They can watch us on YouTube at Benchwarmers FC TV.
And you can also email us at bench@benchwarmersfc.com. I'm making sure that I have that right. And this episode, with all other episodes for our podcast, you'll be able to find on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts by searching Benchwarmers FC. We're going to run through this because it was an awful week for pretty much everybody. Everybody that didn't have Bamford. And if you're watching this and if you can hear closely, you might be able to get a hint of Marco's smug smile right now, because he has Bamford on his team. There was a bit of back and forth, though, on the bench because one bench warmer had Bamford. One bench warmer was asking about Bamford. And at the end of the day,
and one bench
the person that was
in the
supposed
bench
to have him didn't have him. And the person that was going to get him left him on the bench. So I think that was probably karma or justice done. But we'll get to that in a moment. We're going to quickly run through this. And as always, we have information, stats, and some cool things for you guys to listen on, take some notes on, and hopefully, make some decisions for your fantasy team. I do want to say, though, that because of my fellow benchwarmers,
I knew that was coming. I'm sick that I'm the only one here to hear this. So because I'm the only one here, this only affects me. The other guys can still blame me for this. Heads up.
No, not at all. So I just want to tell everyone that we're going to play a disclaimer. We're going to have to play a disclaimer.
Who, and who gave you the idea?
Listen, I will gladly give them the credit. We had an awesome episode with the EPL boys. So if you're listening to this and you haven't caught up with that, definitely go give that a listen. The episode that we had with the EPL boys last week, that was great. It was a lot of fun. And they actually gave us an example of their gambling corner disclaimer, where they make it very, very clear that any and all suggestions should be taken as such, and that any decisions, losses, gains, whatever it may be that they take following said suggestions are at their own discretion, and they are no longer being held responsible in any way for those choices being made. That said, big shout out to EPL boys, Logan and JD. Thanks, guys, for giving us the idea. I will now take a version of that disclaimer, and I'll be saying it for myself. But we will get to that soon, because the first thing that I want to get into is the Benchwarmers Club. We do that every week. We look at the top 6 teams, the big 6, so to speak, and we pick out which player from each of those squads was the bench warmer for the week. So I looked through all the rosters. I looked through the bench. I looked through who sat on it and kept it warm for the whole 90 minutes. We want to start with Manchester City. Ferran Torres. Ferran Torres has been a new pickup for this season. He was an unused sub for their match over the weekend. They did struggle a little bit without Aguero, without Jesus. Aguero was subbed off for KDB at some point in the game. But Ferran Torres is the bench warmer for Manchester City. Next up is Arsenal. Arsenal did not use Joe Willock for their match, the 1-0 loss to Leicester City. They did bring on other notable names such as Pepe and Nketiah to try to make up some ground and find the difference maker, find the equalizer at least, but it just wasn't enough for them. So Joe Willock is the bench warmer for Arsenal. The next 2 names are Donny van de Beek for Man United. Van de Beek has been pretty much a talking point for fans and rivals alike. A lot of people think that he should be getting more starting minutes, but he was left as an unused sub for their match over the weekend, the 0-0 draw versus Chelsea. For Liverpool, we have Xherdan Shaqiri. Shaqiri was a pretty reliable sub, I think, right? Maybe in the last season, 2 seasons before. He's been very seldom seen in the beginning stages of this season. He was the one left on the bench warming it up for them. For Chelsea, an unused sub is Olivier Giroud. Giroud is very much what I would even say the general consensus is an underappreciated sub. He can come on, give you the hold-up play, maybe even give you a headed goal late in the game. But Giroud is definitely someone that could make a difference when called upon. However, it wasn't to be so over the weekend. And Tottenham Hotspur, they left their talisman, their club legend, Gareth Bale, on the bench, whether it be issues for fitness or the selection trouble, what have you. Everyone has had European midweek matches since all these notes were taken. So we will get into that. Moving quickly into our watch list, that's the next thing that we're going to move on to. The watch list is where we give you several names to put onto the list of players that you want to be watching for this coming week. Maybe some of the names that we bring up will help you make a decision. Some of the stats that we mention could help you make a choice. The very first one is the one that I'm kicking myself for because I sold him prematurely, even though I had him since game week 1. The first name on the watch list back again is Wilfried Zaha. Zaha at 7.3 million. He's had 4 shots against Fulham. So far, he's returned in 5 of his 6 matches. Marco is right now nodding his head because it looks like he's done a pretty good job for him as far as giving him the points. And I think, do you still have him now, Marco? Is that someone that you have on your team right now?
I picked him up. I dropped Aubameyang and picked up Zaha and Salah. So yeah, it was a good pickup. It was a smart pickup.
Yeah, it definitely paid off. 13 points, double pointer. He also has quite a few good fixtures coming up, Zaha, and the returns that he's had so far, definitely something they want to pick up on. Maybe someone that you can put in the midfield, just priced at 7.3. The next name on the watch list is Patrick Bamford. Bamford has been pretty much the deciding factor for a lot of teams having either a good or a bad week. We're going to get into it a little bit because it looks like Josue has Bamford on his team, 17 points, ridiculous hat trick, but he's on the bench. Yeah. So he didn't get any of those points. And one other bench warmer that asked him about it was Eric, and Eric essentially was trying to get a feel for whether or not Bamford would be worth it. I'm not sure. I'm going to check right now. I'm looking on my screen.
I think
it looks like he picked them up.
Oh, he did?
For this week. I think he dropped Keenan Davis, the forward from Aston Villa. So he dropped Davis, picked up Bamford, put him on his team. He also switched Vardy for Kane, it looks like. So he got 10 points there, 17 points from Bamford, Kane captain. And I think it's just hilarious that the person I was asking about it ended up reaping the points and the benefits. And the one person that had him didn't do anything at all. I don't have Bamford, so I definitely suffered through that. I was sweating the game week after I saw that hat trick. But Patrick Bamford, the point here is that he's 5.9. He has 6 goals in 6 matches, and it looks like I have a point to that later on in our notes section, but it looks like he might be someone that you want to put up front. The next name is Phil Foden, 6.6, 1 goal in the last game week. This is an interesting one because it could be a very cheap way to get into the Man City midfield. Aguero and Jesus are still going to be out. It looks like maybe Jesus will be back sooner. I would put pretty much them two being out collectively for at least another 2 to 3 weeks. One may take longer than the other. It looks like maybe Jesus might be out for another month. If I'm not mistaken, I could be getting those mixed up. So don't quote me on that. However, they're both out, and that's the big thing. So it looks like players like Foden, Sterling for another name to drop, and KDB, who is also on our watch list at 11.5. They have some pretty good matches coming up after game week 10. They have a pretty good run of matches that are, some people would say, are favorable. Right now, we're looking into game week 7, yes, and there's a few more matches in between, which might be a little bit difficult. But for these two guys, for Man City, even though they haven't been firing on all cylinders, it looks like, I don't want to kind of shoot myself in the foot here, but they play Liverpool and Tottenham. And then after that, for about 6 game weeks up until the end of December, on paper, the hardest matchup they have is against United. Everyone else they play are looking like bottom dwellers, namely Fulham, West Brom, Southampton. So investing in Man City players early, like that's what I'm telling myself, so I don't feel too bad about Sterling's massive 2 points in game week 6. But they could be some players that you want to invest before they start rising, because definitely if they start putting in the goals and they start clicking, while these two forward men are out, they're going to be very, very popular. The last name on the watch list, though, and this is someone that might be a differential, some other players that are a bit more, I guess, experienced, to say the least, with fantasy, is Kilman from Wolves. That's a 4.1 million defender. Very, very cheap way into a solid Wolves defense. The bad thing, though, is that they haven't done very much in the attack, and I have some notes on that we're going to touch on as well later on in this episode. However, I'll be very straightforward with Kilman. Even though he's very cheap, there are many, many rumors in Wolves forums and what have you that he is also a rotation risk. Saiss has been doing well, but maybe not well enough because Marcel has been injured, and he is more of a wingback. And so definitely they've been utilizing Kilman in a back three. Saiss hasn't been that effective in that formation. So what I'm saying with Kilman is that he is a rotation risk, but he's also a very, very good enabler. If you can manage to get Kilman on your team and have him sit on the bench just to slot in whenever you have a conflict, that can be good for you. Who are we dropping this week? Straight up, I'm going to drop Havertz and Werner from the watch list. Now, from your teams from the watch list, the one specific reason why, yes, they scored against Krasnodar in the midweek match. Yes, Ziyech, Pulisic, Havertz, Werner, they were all combining together with assists, goals, penalties. However, I believe that they're too expensive for their returns. They just haven't been clicking so far in the league, and that's something that we have to keep separate from the European matches. The same would apply, I would say, just to get ahead of myself, to Rashford and United assets. You know, just because they're doing well in the European matches midweek, we could see some rotation, we could see some fatigue. It's very much a mixed bag. So yes, while it's a good way to see how players are doing as far as form, it's not very helpful if we trust that only when we talk about which players to pick up. Another name that was actually pretty popular and that people were starting to pick up after his assist was Reguilon. However, Reguilon was dropped this weekend for Davies. So if he's going to be a rotation risk, that is something that I would very much watch out for if Mourinho is still trusting Davies to do the left back duties. Reguilon right now, yes, looks very exciting. He definitely gets forward. His crosses already have produced some returns, but we just saw them go. They went down 1-0 today. They lost 1-0 today in their Europa League match. It didn't look very good. Mourinho definitely put on the starters after the halftime. He had like 3 subs. He put in Son. Bale was on and subbed off for Kane. He put on Lucas Moura. It didn't look too good. So I would definitely stay away from at least a rotation risk that is Reguilon. So we're getting on to our Gameweek 7 notes. I don't want to go through this too fast, but Marco, how did you do for this game week 6? I know you told us that Zaha and Salah were 2 pickups. You definitely had a good week with Zaha coming through. You also had Bamford coming through. What are some positives from your team that you can tell us about as well?
I mean, honestly, so I have Bamford up top, of course. I have Son, which was a 2-week ago pickup, which I'm happy about because he has produced in the past 2 games.
Yeah, he has 3 double-digit returns back to back to back.
And because of Bamford's 17 points, thankfully I have Costa, which wasn't crazy, but still got me 6 points.
Yeah.
So overall, and then everybody else got me 2 and 3. I have a lot of points on the bench with Vardy because of his injury. I thought he wasn't gonna play, but he ended up strategically playing him at the last 15 minutes just to come in and score. And then I had Justin from Leicester, Austin, just assuming that we were gonna dominate.
Right.
But he also provided me 6 points. So those are 13 points wasted on the bench, which I'm gonna have to think over for this upcoming week because there's big games coming along.
There are actually some pretty big matches, and some of the things that are coming up for the fixtures. It's going to look a bit tricky, especially for Leicester City. We can get into a little bit because it looks like Castagne is going to be out injured. Johnny Evans has also pulled up with a bit of a knock, and they could have a depleted defense for the next 1 or 2 game weeks. So that could be something to watch out for. They may definitely rely heavily on Vardy. So going forward, they may adopt the same strategy that they did against Arsenal, which I think managed well, to kind of hold on for the first hour, and then that last bit you put on under. I think he started this. I think he started today for their Europa League match, and Vardy, I think he scored again as well. So definitely something to look out for. And yeah, it just sucks. I guess it sucks that to have those 13 points on the bench, but you definitely have a good selection for this upcoming week. So
yeah,
that's not too bad. Again, this fantasy episode is just to remind everyone about our Benchwarmers Fantasy League, which is going on this season. We have a new leader, just moved up to first place. In Kepa, we trust. It's a little sus, but it looks like Matt, you are now in first place. A great game week, 79 points. Just looking at his team right now, and this 79 points, he got definitely good returns from Son, captain. He had Ings, had Zaha. Those are 2 players that I gave up like stupidly. So I'm not too happy about that. He does have Castang, who is now red flagged. Kane with the 5-pointer. So definitely those 3 guys made his game week. He had a good game week from Schmeichel. He has Schmeichel in the back. That's a great shout. We'll see how Leicester do with these new defensive issues. And still, the shout out is for Matt, who is the new league leader. Second place, Liverpool. We've seen Liverpool a few weeks now in the top 3. The new third place, though, I've dropped down to 4th, and the new third place is Dimitri with his team, Biden Harris 2020. We're looking at Dimitri's team right now. He had a massive 80 points. Sun captain as well. Looks like everyone that had Sun captain did pretty well. McCarthy with a clean sheet, Ayling with a clean sheet, Zaha, Bamford doing the work for him as well. He has Fernandes and Aubameyang, which he may want to look at. So if you are listening to this, Dimitri, those are some areas that we want to probably highlight. And just going through the rest of the bench, you ended up the week, Marco, with 64 points. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. I had a very meager 46. The average points was 48 for the week. Josue ending the game week on 34 points. It's a low. It's a low, but like I say every single week, and I'll repeat it all the time, it's a marathon, guys. Definitely don't give up, because even in Eric's case, he had 34 points last week in game week 5, and this past one, game week 6, he jumped right back up to 59. So things can go very well for you one week to the next, and he definitely moved up a few places in our fantasy league. I think he bumped up to 15, so I think he went up like a good 3 or 4 spots. Right now, Bafana FC, Eddie's in 8th, Josue is in 9th. It looks like Nick has dropped down to 10th, 49 points. Not the best, but we also have Eric and Marco rounding it out with It Got Messy, Let's Party in 21. So, Marco, we'll go back to the player that you were saying that you wanted to try to get rid of. What is the surgery we're going to do for you in this episode?
All right, so think about it, and I think it's the perfect time to take him out because he's not returning. There's not many points. I actually saw the listing. He's not even a top 3 or top 10. I'm talking about Alexander-Arnold. I think it's a waste of money right now. I know you mentioned it a couple weeks ago that it was one of those players that are too high, and right now, the way that Liverpool's playing, it doesn't seem like he's going to be giving me those returns or those assists that I'm looking for him to give me those points. So, as a player that is at I have him as a 7.4 defender. I could easily get rid of him, add more money to my bank, and still have somebody that's going to give me more points that he has given me so far. So, even though you do have him as a possible rotation or rotation player, I was thinking about getting a Saiz.
Saiz from Wolves. Yeah.
Yes. As of right now, he's cheaper. And 2, he is actually first place when it comes to assists and or goals, or points in general, from the back, as a defender.
Yeah, he's had a strong start.
Yeah, so as going from 7.4 to a 5.3, that alone will allow me to have almost 4.6 in my bank, which will maybe allow me to get Kane in the next transfer window, depending
Oof.
on who I drop, or get De Bruyne back into my midfield. I think De Bruyne right now is not the best fit the way that Man City's playing.
Right.
So I think in this case it might be Kane. I might reconsider once this weekend passes. But as of right now, I think I'm gonna lock in and drop Alexander Alder for us for Saiz.
That's a big shout. That's a big shout. And it's a good segue into our notes and questions for game week 7. The first one that I want to touch on, and I'll lead with this: Raul, Saiz, and Kilman. So Jimenez, he's had 2 shots, and he scored twice in the last 2 game weeks. But other than that, he's been very, very, very lucky to get his returns. I think Jimenez, I say this with a bit of bias because I have him on my team. I think if Jimenez is on your squad, it's a good decision to hold. They have 1 or 2 matches which are okay to hold them for. It looks like they honestly, it's a shout that they will get probably lucky. Jimenez has definitely been lucky the last 2 game weeks to give you an 8 and a 9 return with a goal apiece against Leeds and Newcastle. They play against Crystal Palace, which hasn't been doing that great defensively. And then Leicester in the following week with their defensive issues. Southampton has been a little bit stronger as well. So Jimenez is someone that if you can afford the switch and maybe go for someone who is a bit more budget, fine. But if you don't have the extra transfer, I think he's someone that would be worth holding on just for this week. He may do something against Crystal Palace, and then you can revisit it next week. The other 2 guys, Saiz and Kilman, so they're definitely rotation risk because either of those guys could be dropped to make room for Marcel, this wingback that they just bought over the summer. Who it's going to be, there is no confirmation yet so far. So it's definitely a call that you want to make. Whoever you do pick up, though, I think it's going to be good in the long run. Kilman has been doing great for such a new addition to the team. He's already risen to 4.2 in the transfer market for fantasy. And Saiz, it looks like he's going to be someone who'll be really reliable for attacking returns as a defender. The next one is going to be Zaha that I want to talk about. Zaha, I got rid of like an idiot. I will admit that, like a fool. But if I were to have him, and if I were to have the extra transfer, I would bring him in, no question. The thing here is that Zaha has the second highest number of chances. He's been involved so far in 8 out of the 11 chances for Crystal Palace in the season, and he's also on penalties. Like, there's nothing more that you would want to ask from a player on a team like Crystal Palace. I don't mean it with any sort of shade, but a team that is, I guess, like mid-table, like Crystal Palace, or that may perform on average, have the same, like their ceiling isn't as high, or however you want to call it. The one person that's going to spearhead that attack, if you can identify him and then stick to him, Zaha is the greatest pick, is the easiest one that you can take out of that Crystal Palace squad. They have some pretty good, easy matches coming up on paper, again, because you never know, especially this season, but they play Wolves, Leeds, Burnley, Newcastle, and West Brom. All of those defenses, I would say, have the capability of conceding at least a penalty, and that's something that we've seen so often this week. Not just this week, but this season, I mean. The next one, Grealish versus Barkley. This might not be that much, I guess, popular with other managers, but I'm bringing this up if you're on the fence of whether to get one or the other. Grealish, unfortunately, is better in every single department. He has a better shot conversion. He has a higher big chance, higher chance creation, higher penalty area touches. He has the assist potential. Grealish ticks all the boxes over Barkley. The thing with Barkley, unfortunately, is he's moved to an Aston Villa team that's going to be very much a mixed bag now for who's going to return. I think that these 2 guys they're kind of battling with each other over who to pick. I would stick with Grealish if you have him on your team. If you're deciding between the 2, my inclination would be towards Grealish as well. Next one in the Game Week 7 notes is Everton being full strength. So they have Richarlison and Digne out with red card suspensions. They will be back for Fulham in 2 weeks. However, even with those 2 guys out, Calvert-Lewin still was able to score, and he is joint top with 8 chances in the league. this is going to be very weird because I don't know if you saw, Marco, but James, there was a report today that James has a testicle injury from the Van Dijk challenge. And that's what's been bothering him for the past week and a half since the Merseyside derby. So he is now flagged for this weekend, 75% chance. We all saw what happened with Ancelotti saying that he's not going to play, and then he is going to play, and then he ends up playing, and then it doesn't go well for him. Who knows? It might be time, and this is my hot take for this week. It might be time to jump the Calvert-Lewin train, because even though they do have the creation potential, they're missing two very important left-sided players. Digne is definitely someone who's going to give Calvert-Lewin the aerial service. Yes, James can give him the filtered passes and the through balls, but he's also a doubt. So would you really want to stick with Calvert-Lewin when there's players like Ings and Kane that are constantly putting up big numbers? Can you stick with Calvert-Lewin? Yes, by all means, because Everton have actually some decent matches after United. So they play Fulham, Leeds, and Burnley after United in game week 8. So if you want to try to drop Calvert-Lewin and pick him back up, if you have some value tied into him, maybe it won't be, this may not be an option for you, which is completely fine. But if you're thinking about jumping on the Calvert-Lewin train, if you're not on it, which I'm not sure why, but if you haven't picked him up by any means, then you may benefit from thinking about it twice. That's all I'm saying. And the last point I want to make here, which I had mentioned this a little bit earlier about United and the midweek matches, there is right now, I'm looking at some of the pricing predictions as far as the rises, and it looks like Rashford is pretty hot on target for a rise. This is not confirmed. It's just, it's just a very educated guess, if you will. The thing with United assets, though, is so far at home, they haven't done well in the league. At home in the Champions League right now, especially with that Leipzig performance, the hat trick, the penalty, their combination and everything, I think it's something that is I would only look at it individually as a Champions League result. That's it. I don't know, and I'm not sure, and I'm not confident that it's going to carry over into their league form. So they have a tricky fixture against Arsenal this weekend, especially if Arteta decides to finally get his head out of the sand and put Aubameyang as a center forward instead of a winger. And I say that simply because as a fantasy asset, it's very frustrating because Aubameyang, I'm sure, would be in everybody's squad against these bigger opportunities for points versus the lower teams. But anyway, the point here is that even though Rashford has a hot streak, the assets are still improving for United. Bruno has also statistically been shown to perform better in away matches. So this home match may not be the best one to get Bruno. And as another point, Martial is still out until November 7th. So we have another weekend without him to go through. So that's it for the Game Week 7 notes and questions. And the captain choice. Marco, I know you still have some selection issues to do. Who are you looking at for the armband Game Week 7?
I am considering putting Son as my captain. Considering I have it right now. Hopefully, I'll debate a little bit with myself tomorrow and maybe put it back on Salah. But as of right now, I think I'm going to stick with Son.
Spurs are playing home to Brighton, so that's not a bad shout. Right now, I have some 3 names on the sheet. Salah was definitely unlucky last week with that VAR call. Pretty good goal, assisted by Alexander-Arnold as well, so definitely very frustrating. Salah, you wouldn't go wrong. Although West Ham have been kind of difficult, we saw for sure that last week things didn't really go as planned for several teams as far as the defense, as far as clean sheets. And I'm talking about Aston Villa with Leeds, because a lot of people were looking at Emi Martinez. They picked him up, and the first time in the 4 game weeks that he hasn't gotten a clean sheet. So could they go away with a draw? Possibly. But Salah, I think you can never go wrong. Again, another name is Kane, Harry Kane. He's proven himself with his ridiculous amount of assists. It's been shown that Son has been more effective in away fixtures this season. He has a higher points tally in away fixtures this season. Again, home and away don't have much of a difference this year, but we have seen that the away teams have won statistically higher since the restart and fans not being in the stadiums. Away teams have seen a lot more wins go their way. And then as a differential, just to put in there for people that are undecided on one or the other, I have Mane on that list. Mane has shown consistently that he can still hang, he can provide, he can be explosive. He could be someone that could show up at home, but we'll see if you want, for people that may have him or may even want to double up with Mane and Salah. Some must-haves rounding out the end of this episode. Salah, Son, and Kane are definitely must-haves on your team. If you don't have them, it would be smart to try to get them in the next few weeks because they have some pretty good fixtures coming up, especially after game week 10, game week 8, 9, 10, around there for both teams, Spurs and Liverpool looking pretty good. Some differential names that I'm just going to shotgun out there just so that if you want to look at someone, Bamford, it may be unsustainable, but he's definitely going to be on the score sheet again. We're going to trust Bielsa and Leeds to put him among the goals moving forward this season. Christian Pulisic is also another name. He is coming back. Lampard specifically, and to me it's odd just because I'm not a Chelsea fan, but he went out of his way to say publicly that he has never doubted his ability. And he said in his quote that he wants to say that specifically for Pulisic. Maybe they've had some confrontation, some headbutting there, or maybe he knows that Pulisic has been doubting if his manager trusts him. I think coming out and saying that might warrant Pulisic getting that starting role. And then he knows that it's been a mixed bag of returns for the new recruits. He was saying also that they were very tired after the midweek match. They've had 4 hours of sleep, blah, 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 blah. These are professionals, Lampard, please. But Pulisic could be someone moving forward that you want to pick up. Watkins, Ollie Watkins from Aston Villa, another name, very cheap, an enabler, a third forward if you want to go that route. And definitely, speaking of third forwards, Che Adams. I know Ings is probably the person that people would prefer from Southampton, but we saw it this weekend. He definitely turned into the provider with 2 assists. Che Adams finally broke his lame duck as far as not being able to return, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So that is everything for Game Week 7. Thank you, everyone, for listening and making it this far. A reminder to everybody, the deadline for Game Week 7 is tomorrow, Friday. If you're listening to this on Friday, it is on Friday, October 30th at 2:30 p.m. The deadlines are now 90 minutes before every game week, the first match of every game week. So make sure that you get in your transfers, you get in your captain choices, everything. You get your bench set up correctly. If you're going to start Bamford, if you're going to bench Bamford, make sure that you make up your minds. Marco, any last thoughts before we sign off for today?
Yes. Road to first place.
Road to first place.
Let's go.
That's what I like. You see, that's the attitude that I want to see from people that are playing fantasy this year. As always, we encourage you guys, if you haven't joined, it's still open to everyone that wants to join our Benchwarmers Fantasy League. The code is always in the description for the episodes and the posts. My name is Diego, the Stat Troll, joined today by Marco, the Interrupter. This is our fantasy episode for the Game Week 7 preview, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.